So this was an interesting bit of footage released by the Russian military recently. It shows Minister of Defense Andrei Belosov looking around a shiny new conscription center in Moscow. The Russian MOD proudly described this as a one-stop shop for potential recruits, where they can pop in, have a medical and sign on the dotted line. All very convenient, apparently. What this glowing description fails to mention, of course, is where young men like this could well end up, and the high probability they won't be returning. Russia has more than 600,000 soldiers in Ukraine, largely young men from deprived provinces, a long way from wealthy cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. It varies across the country, but they can get tens of thousands of dollars to sign up, plus around $2,700 a month in salary. There's also compensation payments for death and injury, roughly $36,000 for a shattered foot, for instance. The entry requirements aren't exactly stringent, and Ukraine says a quarter of all the Russian men signing up for the Russian military are under criminal investigation for something, and nearly half have some degree of debt they need to pay off. Now, this video is staged for the cameras, of course, but it's interesting because it's normalizing the message that the war is now every Russian's business, even in wealthy places like Moscow. And you can see why. The Kremlin has a problem. It's running out of bodies to fight in its so-called special military operation, the SMO. Historically, it's been recruiting around 30,000 men a month, but Ukraine is now wiping out more men than Moscow can sign up. The Institute for the Study of War, a US defense think tank, says Russia has a recruiting target for this year of 409,000 contract soldiers. That's about 1,100 a day. And it's also about the same number in 1 year as Moscow has recruited in total since the start of the war. Now, it needs that number to keep up the intensity of its assaults and infiltrations. Some regions of Russia have increased signing on bonuses by up to 80%. But the Kremlin's still struggling to recruit. Vladimir Putin is worried there'll be a political and societal backlash if he launches another open mobilization like the one he did in 2022. So he's trying other more covert ways to funnel young men into the military. In some parts of Russia, large universities are being told to make sure at least 2% of their students sign an MOD contract. What do they want the country's brightest young things for? Well, they're specifically being pushed towards Russia's drone units, a new division of the armed forces set up at the end of last year at the behest of Vladimir Putin. Now, at the University of Vladivostok, for instance, students are being offered extended academic leave, free tuition, free accommodation, and grants for signing up. Plus, the university is offering to cover the cost of any military kit and weapons these young people might need to buy. The same goes for universities in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other big cities. And these students are also being offered bigger salaries than the normal contract soldiers. Some are even being promised a first year salary of $87,000 plus a one-off payment of $2,500. Now, the cynical financial calculation here, of course, is that not all of them are going to return and claim their free education. And there's a similar covert recruitment drive going on inside Russian industry, where firms in some parts of Russia are being given quotas for the number of staff that need to sign contracts with the army. In Ryazan, to the southeast of Moscow, companies with up to 300 workers have to provide 2 army recruits. Up to 500 workers, it rises to 3. And firms with over 500 staff have to deliver 5 recruits. So is this going to work? Can Russia recruit enough people to fight in Ukraine? Well, the Kyiv Independent said recently that what we're seeing in Russia is a revised social contract where people are saying, yes, I'll fight, but I'm not doing this for any grand idea of defending Mother Russia from the dreadful Ukrainians. I simply want to be well paid for it. The positive side of that for Putin is there's less concern for the huge numbers being maimed and killed. Ordinary Russians see this now as a transaction. You went to war for money, so what happened to you is your responsibility. Tough luck. Going back to that video, it also provides another clue to how the Kremlin is thinking. This shows that it's digitizing its recruitment process, creating registries of eligible young men. So if it does have to issue another partial mobilization like the one in 2022 down the line, well, the process becomes a whole lot easier.